Thank you, Kay. And where that psalm began reminded me of this story too, about help me follow the way, help me to have integrity with my life. So thank you so much. So it's the Ananias and Sapphira week. One of the funniest moments this week was at Wednesday Bible study, and Sue Barrett was able to join us from Texas. So it's so awesome. So Wednesday we've kept that Zoom, so anyone's welcome to hop in. And you know we do check in. We read the story out loud. We take turns reading it out loud and discuss it. So low barrier. You're always welcome to come. Anyway, Sue saw the title of this week and saw that it was Ananias and Sapphira. And so she thought, oh, yeah, I remember we studied Ananias and Sapphira. Then she read it and she said, oh, that story. So it's if you've been on the tour through the book of Acts, you're like, oh, yeah, Ananias and Sapphira. Then you actually read it and you're like, oh, they're the ones that dropped dead. So it's a memorable story, but it might take you a while to remember why is this story memorable. So it's okay to laugh. It's scripture, it's a story, and the story is meant to get us to think. But it definitely has over-the-top, melodramatic themes going on. But just like a parable, right? We talk about parables here. Jesus used parables as teaching tools. They were over-the-top stories that were not true as far as like reporting detail, something you saw or eyewitness. They're stories that take a familiar thing and then they take a bit of a wild turn, defy logic, and maybe have a shock in there that makes you think. And the shock maybe alerts you to the way of God. So similarly, this story from Acts is a story that seems a little more literally true, but also maybe is more on the scale of a fable, which has true components. But it's definitely a teaching story that gets you to think. So the lead-in to the story is all about the Acts community. So we are, it's kind of a keyhole effect. We can have a window into, well, what were they like in that early community of followers of Jesus? And the book of Acts depicts this community as one. They were all together. They were one. Another attribute of the community was they shared their stuff. And I thought another funny point this week, Wednesday Bible study, was when Charlene said, did they share their toothbrushes? How many people think, yes, they shared their toothbrushes? How many say no? Yeah, I say no, yeah. So, yeah, it was not that level. So they were all one. They shared, you think within reason. So they were one, they shared. And then the third amazing attribute of this community was there was no one in need. Everyone had what they needed to live life. Whoa. Also in that community were apostles. There were leaders who were led by the Spirit. So that sets up the story. And regarding the sharing, the story digs into the level of sharing. So one illustration of the level of sharing, it might not have been toothbrushes, but if you sold land, were you supposed to pocket that for yourself? No. You were to give the proceeds of a big ticket item like a land sale and lay it at the apostles' feet. Same with the sale of your house. You were to sell and give it and put it at the feet of the apostles. So there was this community covenant of how they operated. That's what made it tick. They were one, they shared, and they were one, they shared. There was leadership in how they shared their things in common. So that was the norm of this community. So then there is a good example. Did you catch the name of the good example who put in a bar of sold land and put in a bar of gold? Barnabas. And his name means, he was given a nickname of encouragement, son of encouragement. He was an encouraging figure. Isn't that interesting? But then come along the other illustrations. Ananias, with the consent of his wife Sapphira, so they were in it together, they also sold land. And did they give all the proceeds to Peter? They did not. They withheld the sale, and they did not tell anybody what they were doing. So it seems like instantly Peter knew what was going on. Pretty powerful quality that this apostle had. So Peter confronts Ananias and said, listen, did you sell the land for this price? And did you give us that price? What made you do such a thing? So twice in this passage, Peter is like, why? What motivates such an abominable thing that you did? How? What was it, Satan? So Peter's mind is blown that Ananias would do such a thing. So Peter kind of confirms the facts that this is what happened and says, oh my gosh, how did that happen? And the sheer force of the truth caused Ananias to drop dead. Dropped dead. And as if we didn't get the point, 3 hours pass, and Sapphira, ignorant of what has been going on, she shows up and a parallel thing happens. Peter kind of verifies a fact, says, the truth of the situation, and the truth of the situation causes Sapphira to also drop dead. And then underscoring how terrible this is. So Peter is just, how in the world could this possibly happen? And then they both, not just one, but two of them drop dead over it. There is no hope of resurrection for them. So it's just such a funny detail that for both of them, two young men come and haul off their bodies and bury them. So there's kind of a finality that says this matter is extremely grave. This matter is very important, and this matter of not telling the truth is deadly. It is a community killer. So, in looking at this story, part of me kind of thought, what if we lived in the world where if someone told a harmful lie and were confronted with the fact of telling that harmful lie and they dropped dead? Would you like that world? Would that be a better world? There'd be a lot of dead people, Kay said. But wouldn't it be great to have such clarity of the consequences of lying in community? And let's just say a prayer for our community these days. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. So the truth is, back then and now, when someone tells a harmful lie in community, they get away with it. And it is very discouraging when that happens. So what do? You tell powerful stories that sober people up about the importance of covenant. So the Acts community had a covenant. They knew why they were there. They were there to serve God. They were there to learn. They knew about Jesus. They knew Jesus' call to serve. And there seemed to be some rules in that community that distinguished them from every place else in society. And the rules were, we are one. Perhaps they're one in purpose. And in our oneness, we share our stuff. And because of that, nobody's in need. And maybe that's the purpose of Jesus. In order to make sure everybody's okay, there's no one in need, there's certain things you got to do to have that kind of community. And in order for that community to operate, you need honesty. Honesty. This is where we cue Billy Joel and karaoke. Anybody? 1978? Honesty is such a lonely word. Everyone is so untrue. Honesty is hardly ever heard, and mostly what I need from you. It's kind of like that's what Peter is saying to Ananias and Sapphira. Honesty. So Peter cues up what they did. And sometimes there's quibbling. Oh, they withheld. Oh, they were phony. Oh, they presented as. Peter calls it a lie. How dare you lie? So this system is based on honesty. The honesty of people who have stuff. And then some of you might say, well, what if people pretend to have need and they're going to take stuff from others? They're takers. You know, maybe they really don't have need. They have to be honest too. Honesty is the oil of covenanted community. And it's so hard to be honest and to have accountability when someone is dishonest. So this over-the-top, intense, melodramatic story is there to sober up community. That even though people get away with it, that is no excuse to not value honesty and hold people accountable to an honest standard. So the other day I was listening to an interview with, and I know you'll laugh, but I will say it was with a good politician, okay? I know we like to make politicians the butt of our jokes and politics is bad, politicians are bad. I don't believe that. I think politics is neutral and you can have good and bad. So this person was a reasonable politician, and this person was being interviewed. And so I'm always kind of curious what makes this reasonable, respected person, what makes them tick. And this politician talked about, well, I'm here, and this person serves in Washington, D.C. I'm here to serve my state. So I am here to help my state. So this politician was very focused on their state. And I think that's not a bad focus. And I think it helps that politician get elected. The people of their state, it's like, okay, this person's in Washington, and I know this person's not there out for themselves. They're going to look out for our state. So, sounds like a good game plan. But then I thought to myself, I'm not from their state. What about my state? And then it just made me think about, was that the point? Well, good for you. You get elected. That does work to help you get elected. But then part of me thinks, what's the point? What's the point of our system? What's the point of our country? If it's just this person's going to look out for their state And then, hopefully in Nebraska, we elect people that look out for us. And we have fighters, and not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. So I was thinking about that. And then I thought, there's politics, which is important. You need politics to figure things out, make things palatable. I'm not against it. You need politics. But you know what you also need is leadership. Leadership. Leadership to tell the people, you know what? If we all shared, there's enough for everybody who's in need. So you there, can you help? You there, can you help? There's leadership. There's leadership that tries to teach people. I know you want this and this and this. I know that. And I know we live in a consumer culture. Yes, yes. And competition is good. But I'm kind of interested in leadership that is honest with people. We can't have everything. I don't think sometimes leaders get elected because it's not popular with the populace, right? You follow me on that a little bit? Like, I want to elect somebody who's going to help me. But as followers of Jesus, there's this other dimension of community that we think about. And it's beyond politics. And I think good people who follow Jesus get that. But sometimes we just have to remember. The Acts community is a pretty idealized world. Did that really exist? We don't know. The Acts community was different from the community around it. It had this crazy idea of we're one in, service to Jesus, and Jesus was on a mission to look out for everybody. Crazy. How are we going to do that? We're going to share. Oh my gosh. That doesn't seem like a good strategy. But the strategy is to make sure everybody's okay. To make sure everybody's okay. And it requires the apostolic leadership and example. Oof. Very hard to do. The community of Acts was different. It was maybe a little ahead of its time, who knows? And guess what's kind of like the community of Acts today? Church. As church, we have the DNA of the Acts community that makes us go beyond politics and think about, what would God want? So, thinking about the story and honesty, I thought maybe there's 3 things to consider. 1, I don't care if Ananias and Sapphira are dishonest. I don't care. I'm going to be honest. I know Ananias and Sapphira can get away with stuff, and it's wrong, and it's unfair, and I'm going to stay in my lane, like Psalm 15. I'm going to be honest and try as best as I can to still live a life of integrity. 2. See if I can remember my 2. 2. So at first I said, I don't care what they're doing. I'm going to be honest. 2, I do care that they're dishonest insofar as they need to be held accountable. And I care about leadership and not politics. And it's very hard to be a leader who holds honesty up and holds people accountable, because it's just too easy to get away with things. It's very hard. You get called a prude or whatever. But step 2 is I'm going to value accountability to covenants. And you got to remember what the covenant is. And so that's kind of part 3, is just remembering what's our purpose? what's our covenant? And I think that's operational, whether it's our church, our presbytery has a covenant, our country has a covenant. One aspect of the covenant we're going to celebrate on July 4th. What happened on July 4th, 249 years ago? Yeah, it was the Declaration of Independence, which was kind of the starting covenant of our country, which then became, then we had the Constitution and other things like that. So we are a covenanted people. And it doesn't mean that we're boring and have to be rule followers and we're not free. This sets us free so that everybody is safe. And this helps us pursue happiness. So let's be bearers of Christ in how we conduct ourselves personally and in any group that we are a part of. To God be the glory. And if I held up a sign, I would say, Yay!